Good afternoon. So it's Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So I'm doing very well with my consistency this time. So today we're going to be talking about motivation and pleasure. So this video is going to be about half an hour long, this live I should say, and I will be posting it on my website afterwards. Okay, so let's kick off. Always prepared. Okay, so motivation and pleasure. This is the key thing that we're going to talk about today, because a lot of women that I train and coach sort of really start to recognise that their motivation drops around this time. Okay, but this for generally, for myself and people who I train, and women, around this sort of age group, sort of late 40s, 50s, even 60s. This is very much a time of our lives when many of us are actively looking for some change, or really getting a sense of feeling that we're ready for change. And, it's because we don't have the same responsibilities anymore. Our kids have either grown up or are growing up and not dependent on us in the same way. We can be either thinking about retiring, or maybe even just changing direction to some career that's going to be a little bit more fulfilling than what we've got now. And, we still feel that we've got a lot to live for and a lot to give. And, it's undeniable that, you've got a sense of your age. I think once you get to, I don't know, it's different for everyone, isn't it? But certainly your late 40s into 50s, you suddenly think, oh my God, that's a big number. But that doesn't mean that you don't want fun anymore. You still want fun, you still want excitement, you still want adventure in your life. And for women, there's also a sense of, after years of being really focused on others, bringing up a family, being responsible for a home, and I think you sort of carry over that sort of mothering and nurturing thing into your career as well, there starts to become a sense of this being our time. You sort of start to realise that this is a time that you want to sort of start to make it about you. Okay, and in doing that, that throws a spotlight back onto our health. Okay, because I think it's fair to say that there's probably been a personal cost to many people for being so focused on others through their lives. We've developed bad eating habits over time, taken shortcuts with our food because of time. We've maybe had too much alcohol, we've not had enough time to exercise. All sort of things that sort of you don't really notice but build up over time. And we know we shouldn't be doing those things, but we do with good reason. And then again, you get into your late 40s and 50s, and you got menopause hits you, thanks very much. And that brings with it a whole host of other things, lack of sleep, low energy, a whole range of symptoms that can range from stress to itchy skin, just all sorts of stuff that just then really, just sort of gives you a sense of things feeling harder, wanting things to change, but also really feeling like you need to look after yourself. Okay. And there's obviously been a lot in the media recently, over the past few months, and very importantly as well, about menopause and throwing a spotlight onto the symptoms and what women go through. So at least there's a sense now, I think, for most people that feel that they're not alone. Our mothers didn't have that luxury. They sort of suffered in silence, and it wasn't talked about. But at least we've got a better sense now that this is something that's very normal, and I think with that it brings some relief. But again, this goes back to our health and about this being our time. We know we want to feel better in our minds, in our bodies. And when I talk about that, I don't talk about wanting to have a bikini body or feel like we have to diet to look a certain way anymore. I really see that that's not something that becomes important to women, in just for the sake of looking a certain way and conforming. But it's much more about wanting to feel strong, wanting to feel powerful, wanting to have your confidence back. Another good word is also feeling assertive, feeling like you know what you want and you're prepared to ask for it and go for it, and therefore feeling in control. Okay, and that's really what the qualities that you need, really, to then be in good shape, physically, mentally, energetically, to do whatever you want in your life. And, to get all of that, there's a lot of change potentially here, but it comes back to the basics, doesn't it? It comes back to what we eat, it comes back to exercise, it comes back to stress management, it comes back to sleep. Okay, and if you think about the idea of healthy eating, by definition, it means food that's good for our health. We know that, we already know that, we already believe it, we know it's true. That's not up for debate, I think, for most people. What we do struggle with is a real lack of motivation to eat the things that we should be eating, or not to eat the things we shouldn't be eating as well, which is probably a bigger problem. And that's where we mostly fall down. So, and certainly, I recognise that people recognise that they start to feel that the motivation drops and they can't be bothered. You just get that sense of knowing but can't be bothered anyway, So the $1 million question, I think, and what we're going to look at today is how important is motivation and can you find it again? Okay. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about motivation because, from a menopause point of view, we think about hot sweats, sleepless nights as classic menopause, but low motivation is actually a symptom as well. And many people notice that the motivation drops around the time, in the sort of mid-40s and onwards, coincided with menopause and perimenopause, but they don't always connect it as being a menopause symptom, okay? You just have this creeping sense over time and just notice that you're not as bothered anymore, or you can't be bothered anymore, and you can't find it in yourself to do things that you might have found hard but able to do when you were younger. And because we're not attributing this sort of sense or this lack of motivation to a hormonal problem that we're all going through, we tend to blame ourselves because women are great, we're our own worst critics, we're really hard on ourselves. So if we see that we're not motivated, it's a personal failing and we come down on ourselves like it's under bricks. And, that's very, very common. So when we start to think, how do you get your motivation back? How do you find your motivation to eat healthier, to not snack or eat the junk you become reliant on? You need to know that motivation is linked to pleasure. So it's two sides of a balance. There's got to be an equilibrium. Because if you sort of think about what motivation is the drive to do hard work, to make an effort, to do something, okay, whatever it is. And the only reason that we actually have that drive, because we know at the other end of that hard work, there's some enjoyment, some pleasure. So we've got a drive to do hard work, which is our motivation, because the pleasure is the payoff, okay? Now, the problem for women is that menopause dulls pleasure sensations. So that means things that we used to be able to make an effort to do don't give us any pleasure or enjoyment anymore, or don't give us as much. So then what follows is our brain says, hey, we're doing all this work over here, but actually, what's the point? We're not enjoying it. Don't do the work. That's how our brains work. That's how we have a drive to do things. So, say from a practical point of view, if you go to the effort of cooking a meal, let's say you go to Tesco now and you make an elaborate salad and spend a small fortune on lovely ingredients, but it's a cold day and you just don't enjoy it, then you've gone to a huge amount of effort and no reward. Worse, you might not enjoy it but still crave something else and end up eating a cheesecake to make yourself feel better because you feel like you're hard done by that you've made all this effort and you've just sort of fallen a bit flat. Your brain isn't going to say, oh, go make a salad again tomorrow. No, because that effort didn't get you any reward. So this is why you sort of end up breaking that cycle, because if we're not enjoying something, we don't want to do it. Okay. So, and I think this time of our lives can feel really intense for reasons that I've already talked about. So with life in general, for women, there's definitely a sense that we have to put a lot of effort into it. It's hard work. It's hard work to get through the day when you've maybe not had a good sleep, when your kids are driving you mad, when work's on your back all the time. We have to keep going. And we need to get pleasure to keep us motivated to keep going through the day. And it's not that we need it, it's actually absolutely vital, And this is where when you're not getting pleasure anymore, but having to go through this daily grind of still doing because you've got to pay the bills, you've got to get the kids out to college or school or whatever it is, but there's no pleasure or enjoyment from life. This is when you then start to find that your mood starts to drop. And that can lead to, it can lead to, depression and really feeling like there's no point anymore. And it can take people into quite a dark place where they're really can't take the foot off the gas, but just not having any enjoyment from their life anymore, okay, on a day-to-day basis. So this is, massive. And I'm going to come on to food in a minute, but bear with me because there's another thing that I just want you to think about. So from a female perspective, women often get a lot of enjoyment or rewards from doing things for others, okay? So, by the time I'm 50, so for the past 20 years, if you've had kids and stuff like that, most of your rewards have been coming from getting that little smiley face, which you definitely don't get anymore, I'll say, or very rare, a hard one. But, you spent decades of your life getting your primary source of enjoyment or reward from doing things for others. And that has, over time made us dependent on the reactions of others for rewards, for happiness, reward for our effort. So, and now what's starting to happen at this age is our kids aren't around, or they're walking around with a miserable face and locking themselves in the room every minute, or our partners don't notice, or our parents just take the fact that we'll help them for granted, or our friends do. And, there's another factor as well, that the declining female hormones from the menopause linked to us instinctively feeling less nurturing. So, because we don't need to be, we're not going to have babies. We don't need to have that nurturing feeling. So we can lose the drive to look after people and look after things, except society tells us different things. So we've got to keep being this selfless woman and look after our partners and look after our kids, even though they're probably all more than capable of looking after themselves. So we're just creating this huge cycle of having to put loads of effort, loads of work into other people and not getting as much pleasure from it as we used to. Okay? And that's a big change when that starts to build up and you start to recognise that. This can then lead eventually to people feeling trapped, feeling overwhelmed, and this is all linked to this combination of life, menopause, changing your life stage. Okay. So, is it any wonder that food has become such a vital source of pleasure in our daily lives, And food, especially high fat, high sugar food, gives us, actually works in our brains and gives us a really intense pleasure hit. That's a scientific fact. And I think many of us just really need that. You really need that moment in the day where you just have something to eat or relax and feel yourself do that sort of collapse inwards once you get a glass of wine in your hand on the sofa at the end of the day. And, food and drink is so easy. It's so convenient. It's around us all the time. It's not even expensive, relatively speaking. It really doesn't take much effort or imagination to do it. It's just at the end of it, it's within an arm's reach to grab something that instantly makes us feel better, makes us feel like it's all worth it. And this is why consistent healthy eating becomes so hard for us. And again, many women notice that you really don't have that willpower or that motivation to not eat, sugary, fatty food at this age, and it's worse than before. And this is why, okay? And our brains love, rituals. They love little habits. If your little habit is to curl up on the sofa with a glass of wine every night, the night you tell yourself, I'm not doing that because I'm on a diet tomorrow, your brain's like, oh, no, I was looking forward to this. I'm ready for this. Get that wine. And it's only a matter of time before you give in again because that your brain sends really powerful signals. So, and we look forward to the cake with our coffee, the dessert after our dinner. And individually, these things aren't problems in themselves, but our brains work by creating little rituals, routines, habits, and they start to build up, so you might be having a really indulgent coffee, like from a shop with loads of milk in, loads of calories, and then the cake comes in, and then there's wine later, and then there's a bag of crisps while you're at your desk, and you're looking forward to these little things, and they're actually getting you through the day, okay? So this is how this sort of starts to build up. Now, that's not to say you can't eat chocolate, you can't eat cake, you can't drink. None of those things on their own are big deals or problematic, I should say. But if you're becoming more reliant on food highs, then you need to do something about it. It's not just, it's becoming an extra source of calories, and that can lead to, not just weight gain, but it also can lead to a roller coaster of emotions, guilt, frustration, all these things. But bigger than that, it's masking the fact that you need something else in your life that makes you feel happy and feel like life's worth living. And I want you to see why this is happening. I want you to see that the reason that you can't give up, your sort of treats is because of all the things that we've talked about, because you're not finding pleasure in your life, because, just of this life stage that we're in. And this is really, really important, because it's not the food that's the problem. The problem is that our lives have narrowed to the extent over the years, this is a really gradual process, to the extent that we've become reliant on food as a convenient source of pleasure, So what do you do about it? Okay, so this is a time of your life where then you need to take back responsibility for our own pleasure, all right? You have to learn what makes you tick, what we enjoy again, what makes us happy, what makes us feel satisfied with our lives. And only us can, only we can do that. We can't get our pleasure from pleasing other people or for doing things that people want us to do. We've done with all that. We have to rediscover pleasure in our own lives, okay? And only when you do that, only when you find pleasure from other things in your life, is your reliance on food, snacks, high sugar, high fat food going to change. Now, I've got a nearly 16-year-old, and there's mixed emotions there. It's a tough time having teenagers and being in a battle with your kids. But it's interesting when I look at her, she is, you're in that lovely stage of your life where you're just very self-centred. Your world revolves around you, probably the opposite to where we've become as mothers. And, she will spend hours trying different makeup looks that never see the light of day, or trying on different outfits, or doing different hairstyles, or doing beauty routines. She can really lose herself for hours. She would show no interest in eating, snacking, because she's got too much to do. Food is almost an inconvenience. She's got to stop having fun or doing the things that she loves to go and eat. And you might even be able to remember a time in your life where food was an inconvenience to you, or eating was an inconvenience. I can certainly remember that myself, very long time ago. Whereas, as adults, we've become really unimaginative over time. We've been really focused on everyone else, so we've lost touch with what we enjoy. We've not had much time, so we've sort of not been able to sort of do things because we're just grabbing little bits of time. And, we've become gradually unable to entertain ourselves. Or if we do have a minute, we just look for more jobs because we know we can always find some. And you can see how food has filled that gap very, very nicely because it's so quick, easy, convenient. That's what's happened. So the task then, in looking at motivation, is you've got to dial up that pleasure again. You've got to find enjoyment and pleasure in your life. And that's what you need to look at. You've got to look and find and discover new pleasures for yourself that food, snacks have been a substitute for. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, it's a process, of course. It's not something that you just sort of change overnight. And the way I would recommend starting with this is next time you notice that you find yourself craving something, to ask yourself what's going on. Okay, what feelings, what emotions are you experiencing right now? And I'll give you an example from me actually, because about 3 years ago, pre-lockdown, this was, I think, and I was working from home, working on my own. So I was working as a consultant, and I remember just one day finding myself in front of the fridge with the door open, and I didn't even know why I was there. I didn't really remember how I got there, and I was just looking for something to eat. And I sort of dialed it back a bit, and I thought, what happened there? Because I genuinely was actually quite bemused. Why am I in front of the fridge? And I'm a big journaling fan, and that's what I did to help me. I had to sort of write down. And what I recognised is that I was doing some work that I found difficult, and I wasn't sure how to do it. I didn't have anyone to ask because I was on my own, and it was something that I felt uncomfortable with. And as soon as I get that sort of feeling of discomfort or anxiety and not quite being sure of myself, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for me. And what I was doing was I was getting up out of my desk and eating something, because the eating was pushing that food, pushing that feeling away, distracting me, taking me away from like a negative discomfort, uncomfortable emotion, to give me something that was nice, felt nice, was nice food. I wasn't going in there making a boiled egg. I was looking for chunks of cheese or chocolate or biscuits. That's where I was going for, something that would make me feel better. So you need to just sort of stop and think about what it is for you and notice your own patterns. So say journaling is helpful. And this is a process because you want to build up your awareness of your cravings pattern, and which, I still recognise that today. As soon as I'm doing something where I need to get my head down and concentrate and I'm finding a little bit hard to get started, I really do still want to go off and have something. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I can pull it back and just have a coffee or a drink of water or something else. But it's still there. But then, the other part of that is, instead of just saying, oh yeah, I crave when I'm anxious or I've got work to do, what do you actually need instead of the food? Because there is a need there. In that situation, I needed to probably have a chat with someone, get some reassurance, bat a few ideas around with people. And there's something else that you need rather than the food. So you're trying to spot the pattern and then try and understand what it is that you need instead. And that can help break the craving. But we're going back to the idea that we need a little bit of excitement in our lives, a little bit of pleasure to reduce the monotony, things that give us a boost and make us feel good, spike our happiness hormones. Food does all of those things, but we're trying to extract ourselves away from using food to do that. So the next step, once you start to recognise that you're doing these things and spot the patterns, is then to go on a little journey of experimentation and trying different things that can make you feel good, okay? And it's not easy to do this because, it's very easy to sit in your house and go walk to the kitchen. And so it actually means that you're stepping out of your comfort zone, okay, trying to do things. But it ties in with this desire that many middle-aged, I still can't say that word without cringing a bit, it ties in with that desire for change. We want our lives to change. We're bored of how they've been for the past decades. We're ready for something new. So because you need to break out from where you are now and do something different. And if you watched my video from last week where it was talking about being stuck in your own head with this overactive brain, it's the same thing. It follows on. You're trying to get out of your head and do stuff instead. Yeah? So you're not just sat in your house eating your feelings and eating your frustration. You're actually learning how to live your life again. Okay? And there's a lot. It's going to take a bit of effort, if I'm honest. I've been trying to do this myself, and I admit I really don't find it easy. Because you do still have ties. You are still tied to your house, to your job, to your family. There's still stuff you have to do. It's not like you just can disappear and go on an adventure. So, it does take a little bit of effort to think about what things can I do that fit in to my life, to my day. Some ideas for you, okay? So, it's something that you're going to have to do, but it can be, I've taken a little bit of inspiration from my daughter, act a bit like a younger version of myself, maybe, dialing up the self-care, making a bit more time to do my hair or do my makeup or try on my clothes and just be a little bit more playful and, think about, making myself look a little bit better. It's very easy in my job to just be in leggings and a sweatshirt all day and big thick socks because I'm outside and cold. So it's making a little bit of an effort, but that's giving me time and I feel better for that. It could be that you spend time, planning a holiday or researching new restaurants or restyling your home in a different way just to make it look a little bit nicer. So you're just finding things to do with your time other than eat that are actually going to make you feel a bit better about yourself, A good one to think about also is doing nothing. We can always feel like we can always find things to do, and not things for ourselves and not just eating. There's always washing to put away or ironing, or there's always a job that needs to be done. Women are terrible at doing nothing. Sometimes we just need to do nothing, You remember your kids when they were toddlers and they'd be shattered and didn't want to go to bed. Well, we're the same. We're the same, really. We need to sit down and do nothing, take our brain out and relax. So that can be something that we're just craving and we have to relearn or teach ourselves to do it again. This is where, you can start thinking about exercise as well, because exercise, if you get rid of the idea of burning calories or trying to make your body smaller, exercise just for the pleasure of moving, for the pleasure of being outside in nature, for the pleasure of having a little bit of time to yourself, time to think, just time to be on your own. This can be a really nice thing, and anything that would tick an activity box. I've got a client who just started doing Zumba just because she enjoyed it and it was a real laugh. I've been trying to go cycling more because we're trying to do some training for a holiday that I've set out that's out my comfort zone, So you're just trying to do little things, and exercise can be part of that as well. So can food, because food can be an act of self-care. It can be about you saying, what do I really love? I don't know about you, but if anyone says to me, do you want to go out for a meal? I always say, yeah, what do you fancy? Or if someone says, what do I want? I'll just say, well, what do you want? I can't even make a decision or be assertive and say what I want to have. So cooking can be something where you make something pleasant. You maybe put Netflix on or put some music on and you think, what's my favourite meal? I'm going to make it myself. And it's a caveat with cooking, because cooking can't be a chore for others, and cooking is a thankless chore. Everyone takes for granted that you're just going to knock out something that's restaurant standard, that's everyone's favourite dinner. That's just an everyday thing. This is about doing something that's for you, for something that you will really love and you will really enjoy. Okay, so that's just a couple of, more than a couple, but a few different things that you can start to do, to think about doing some different things that get you out of your head and start doing stuff and start building, pleasure in your life. And that's why when you think about it like this, I've read things that talk about using activities to distract you from cravings. This is a lot more than just trying to distract you from eating. This is a way to reconnect with yourself, to relearn what you like, what you enjoy, and regain that sense of doing more with your life. It's about breaking out of this mold that you've been stuck in for years. Okay, all right then. So just wrapping up now, coming to the end of it. So just want to just reiterate a couple of things. This is, I want you to think about motivation and think about or be aware of how motivation works and how it's linked to pleasure. And if you're feeling that your motivation's down, a thing to do is to look at how you boost the pleasure in your life. If you're looking for motivation to reduce the cravings and reduce your sort of the pull to eat food that isn't good for you, you need to reframe why you're craving that food. You're understandably looking for pleasure in your life. We need pleasure in our life. But you want to then try and find other pleasure in your life, and tie changing your habits into rediscovering yourself and finding more pleasure. This is something that you're going to go into as a bit of an experimental phase, okay? Sometimes we're looking for something of meaning in our lives. This isn't about finding that thing. You might discover it on the way. But this is just about a bit of a scattergun, approach of trying a few different things, seeing if you like it. Pay attention to what you enjoy, ditch the things you don't enjoy and do more of the stuff that you do get a kick from. We went into Manchester a few weeks ago to look around some art galleries. It was nice, but I didn't come away thinking I wanted to do that every weekend, and I've not done it since. And I don't care if it makes me uncultured. It's not my thing. So I did it, tick. I'm going to do something else now and try and find different things as well. So, and it's a lovely process to start enjoying learning about yourself again, because every decision you make, every time you say what you want, every time you decide to do something for yourself instead of just going with the flow or going along with everyone else, I want you to enjoy that sense of becoming stronger, becoming more assertive, becoming more in control of your life, of not needing to rely on, sugar and fat and greasy stuff to enjoy your life. Find more things that you really do enjoy and build on it. Okay, so that's what I want to leave you with today. I hope you found that useful. Love to hear what you think in the comments. If you want any more, a lot of this comes from my book, Why Women Over 40 Can't Lose Weight. And you'll find lots more thoughts and advice like that in that book as well, if you want to grab a copy of that from Amazon. But I'll be doing another one of these next Wednesday, so tune in. Have a wonderful rest of the day and hope to see you soon. Okay, bye now.